could go. But 3 days away from his daughter felt like 3 years. 3 days pretending to care about trust, falls, and corporate synergy while his performance review hung over his head like a sword. Any questions? Victoria's gaze swept the room, clinical and detached. No one raised a hand. No one ever did when Victoria Hale asked questions. She didn't want answers. She wanted compliance. Ethan looked down at his phone. A text from Maya's school about picture day next week. Another from his landlord about rent. Another from his mother asking if he was eating enough. He typed out a reply to none of them and shoved the phone back in his pocket. Walker. His head snapped up. Victoria was looking directly at him. 200 pairs of eyes followed. You've been on the Belmont project for 8 months, she said. Her tone was neutral, which somehow made it worse. Where are we on the timeline? His mouth went dry. We're on track. The vendor delays pushed us back 2 weeks, but we've adjusted the schedule. We'll hit the March deadline. Will you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Yes, Ethan said, forcing his voice to stay steady. We will. Victoria held his gaze for another 3 seconds. He counted, then moved on to the next agenda item. Ethan exhaled slowly and became acutely aware that his shirt was sticking to his back. After the meeting, he made it halfway to the elevator before someone caught his arm. Hey, you good? It was Marcus Chen, one of the other project managers, perpetually optimistic in a way that made Ethan tired. Marcus had a wife, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, and no idea what it was like to choose between groceries and car insurance. Yeah, Ethan said. Fine. That was brutal. She doesn't usually call people out like that in the all hands. She's just doing her job. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Her job is to terrify middle management? Her job is to run a company. Man, you're defending her now? Marcus laughed, but there was an edge to it. You know she doesn't even know your name, right? She called you Walker, like you're a file cabinet. Ethan shrugged. He didn't have the energy to explain that he didn't care whether Victoria Hale knew his name. He cared about keeping his job. He cared about health insurance and Maya's college fund and not ending up back in the apartment complex where he grew up, where his mom still lived, where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbors' arguments and smell their dinner. You going on the retreat? Marcus asked. Probably. Good. Maybe you can finally relax. When's the last time you took a day off? Ethan didn't answer because he didn't remember. Friday morning came too fast. Ethan stood in the parking lot at 6 a.m. with a duffel bag and a travel mug of coffee that had already gone lukewarm. The bus idled near the curb, exhaust curling into the gray October air. Employees clustered in small groups, looking like hostages pretending to be excited. Maya had cried when he dropped her off at his mom's apartment the night before. Not the loud, dramatic kind of crying, just the quiet kind that made his chest hurt. She was 7 and still didn't understand why Daddy had to work so much. I'll be back Sunday night, he'd told her, crouching down to her level. That's only 2 sleeps. 3, she'd corrected, because Maya was good at math. 2.5. She'd smiled a little at that, which felt like a victory. Now, standing in the cold with 100 coworkers he barely knew, Ethan wondered if he should have just quit. Found a job with fewer hours and worse pay. Been a present father instead of a tired one. All right, people, let's load up, someone shouted from the front of the bus. Ethan climbed aboard and found a seat near the back. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo gallery. Maya grinning with her 2 front teeth missing. Maya covered in paint from art class. Maya asleep on the couch with her stuffed rabbit. The seat next to him stayed empty as the bus filled up. He was fine with that. The engine rumbled to life. The bus lurched forward, and then the door opened one last time. Victoria Hale stepped on. She moved down the aisle without acknowledging anyone, her gaze fixed on some point in the middle distance. She wore a black coat, black boots, and an expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. Ethan looked down at his phone and prayed she wouldn't sit near him. She stopped 2 rows ahead, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something sharp and expensive. Close enough that when she pulled out her tablet and started typing, he could hear the faint click of her nails on the screen. The bus pulled onto the highway. 2.5 hours to the Cascade Mountains. Ethan put in his earbuds and closed his eyes. But the retreat center looked like every corporate retreat center. Log cabin aesthetic, vaulted ceilings, motivational posters about teamwork. They unloaded in waves, hauling luggage into a lobby that smelled like pine and industrial cleaner. "Welcome to Cascade Ridge." A woman in a fleece vest with a name tag that said Jennifer spread her arms wide like she was greeting old friends. "We've got an amazing weekend planned for you. Team challenges, leadership workshops, and tonight, a special dinner under the stars." Someone in the back muttered, "It's 40 degrees outside." Jennifer's smile didn't falter. "We have heaters." Ethan checked in at the front desk, got his room key, and headed upstairs. The room was small and aggressively neutral. Beige walls, beige bedspread, a landscape painting of a mountain that might have been the one outside the window. He dropped his bag on the bed and sat down. His phone buzzed. "Mom." "Maya's doing great. We made cookies." He smiled and typed back, "Save me one." "Mom." "Too late." Another buzz, this one from work email. A message from his boss about the Belmont project. "Need to discuss timeline concerns." "Let's connect Monday." Ethan's jaw tightened. Timeline concerns, which meant someone had talked to Victoria, which meant his job was more precarious than he'd thought. He shoved the phone in his pocket and went downstairs. Dinner was loud. 100 people crammed into the dining hall, passing plates of chicken and roasted vegetables, pretending this was fun. Ethan sat with Marcus and a few others from his department, nodding along to conversations about mortgage rates and kids' soccer leagues. Victoria sat at a table near the windows with the senior leadership team. She didn't eat much. Mostly she listened, her expression unreadable. Ethan caught himself staring and looked away. After dinner, Jennifer corralled everyone outside for what she called a bonding activity. It involved ropes, blindfolds, and a lot of yelling. Ethan participated because he had to, but his mind was elsewhere. On Maya, on the project, on the email waiting for him Monday morning. By 9 p.m., people started drifting back to their rooms. Ethan was halfway up the stairs when someone called his name. Not Walker, his actual name. He turned. Victoria stood at the bottom of the staircase, her coat draped over one arm. "We need to talk about Belmont," she said. His stomach dropped. "Now?" "Unless you'd prefer to wait until I fire you." She said it without malice, just fact. Ethan descended the stairs slowly. "I'm on track, I told you that. Your vendor pushed the delivery date again, third time this quarter. I'm handling it. Are you?" She tilted her head, studying him like he was a spreadsheet that didn't add up. "Because from where I'm standing, you're drowning." He opened his mouth to argue, but the words didn't come. She sighed. "Look, I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to make sure this company doesn't collapse because people are too proud to ask for help. I don't need help." "Everyone needs help, Walker." She pulled her coat tighter. "Even me." For a moment, something flickered across her face. Something that wasn't cold or detached. Just tired. Then it was gone. "Get some sleep," she said. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She walked past him, up the stairs, and disappeared around the corner. Ethan stood there for a long time, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Saturday morning started with yoga. Ethan hated yoga. He stood in the back of the room, trying not to fall over during tree pose, while Jennifer's voice floated through the speakers. "Breathe into your center. Find your balance. Let go of what no longer serves you." What no longer served him was this entire weekend. After yoga came a workshop on synergistic leadership, which was just a fancy way of saying, do more with less. Ethan took notes he'd never read again and checked his phone every 10 minutes. Maya: "Grandma says hi. Can we get ice cream when you come home?" Ethan: "Absolutely." Maya: "Chocolate?" Ethan: "Whatever you want." Lunch was sandwiches and small talk. Ethan ate alone on the deck, watching clouds roll in over the mountains. The sky had that heavy, bruised look that meant weather was coming. By mid-afternoon, the wind had picked up. Jennifer gathered everyone in the main hall. "So we're keeping an eye on the forecast. There's a storm system moving in, but we should be fine. Worst case, we adjust tomorrow's schedule." Someone asked, "What if it gets bad?" "We have contingency plans," Jennifer said brightly. "Nothing to worry about." Ethan looked out the window. The trees were bending sideways. By dinner, the snow had started. Not the light, picturesque kind. the heavy, sideways kind that erased the world in white. The retreat center lost power twice during the meal. Backup generators kicked in, but the lights flickered like a heartbeat struggling to hold steady. "All right, everyone," Jennifer announced, her brightness finally cracking. "We're going to move up the evacuation timeline. Buses will be here in an hour. Start packing." The room erupted into motion. Ethan headed upstairs, threw his clothes into his duffel, and checked his phone. No signal. He tried calling his mom. Nothing. Downstairs, chaos. People crowded the lobby, shouting questions no one could answer. The buses were late. The roads were getting worse. Someone said the highway was closed. Ethan pushed through the crowd, looking for someone in charge. "Excuse me." A man in a Cascade development jacket, some logistics coordinator, stood on a chair, waving his arms. "Listen up. We're implementing the emergency protocol. We have several cabins on the property for overflow. We're going to assign people in pairs and get everyone sheltered until the storm passes." "Pairs?" someone yelled. "I'm not sharing a cabin with—" "You don't have a choice," the coordinator snapped. "This is about safety, not comfort. We'll call out assignments. Grab your gear and head to your designated location." Ethan's heart pounded. He didn't care who he got stuck with as long as he got out of this storm and back to Maya as soon as possible. The coordinator started reading names off a tablet. Chenin Rodriguez, Cabin 3, Patterson and Liu, Cabin 5. Ethan waited. Walker and Hale, Cabin 7. The room seemed to tilt. He looked up, scanning the crowd. Victoria stood near the windows, her face unreadable. Their eyes met. And Ethan realized that the storm outside wasn't the only thing he needed to survive tonight. The path to Cabin 7 was barely visible. Ethan trudged through snow that was already knee-deep, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, a flashlight in his other hand. Victoria walked a few feet ahead, moving with the same brisk efficiency she brought to board meetings. Neither of them had spoken since leaving the main lodge. The wind howled through the trees, hurling snow in every direction. Ethan's face was numb. His fingers ached inside his gloves. He could barely see 10 feet ahead. "There, this!" Victoria shouted over the wind, pointing. A small structure emerged from the white. A cabin, more like a shed with windows. Ethan had never been so happy to see 4 walls in his life. Victoria reached the door first and yanked it open. They stumbled inside, dragging snow and cold with them. Ethan slammed the door shut and leaned against it, breathing hard. The cabin was small, one room, a kitchenette on one side, a stone fireplace on the other, and in the middle, one bed, not a couch that folded out, not a cot shoved in the corner. One bed. Victoria stared at it like it had personally offended her. "You've got to be kidding," she said. Ethan set his bag down. "There's probably blankets. I can take the floor." "Don't be ridiculous. It's going to drop below freezing tonight." "Then what do you suggest?" She didn't answer. The cabin was cold. Colder than outside, somehow. Ethan crossed to the fireplace and found a stack of wood and kindling. He knelt down and started building a fire, his hands shaking from cold or adrenaline or both. Victoria moved through the cabin with sharp, efficient steps, checking the windows, the door, the small bathroom in the corner. "No phone signal," she said. "No Wi-Fi, no landline." "Shocking." She shot him a look. The fire caught. Ethan sat back on his heels and watched the flames grow, feeling the first hint of warmth on his face. Victoria stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the storm. "We'll be fine," Ethan said, more to himself than to her. "Storm will pass. We'll hike back in the morning." "Maybe." "Maybe." She turned to face him. "Do you have any idea how fast weather changes in the mountains? This could last hours or days." "Days." "I'm not saying it will. I'm saying it could." She pulled off her coat and draped it over a chair. Underneath, she wore a thin sweater that looked expensive and entirely impractical. "We need to conserve heat, keep the fire going, stay dry." Ethan nodded. He wasn't going to argue with her. Not when she was right. He stood and moved to the kitchenette, opening cabinets, canned soup, crackers, bottled water, enough for a couple of days if they rationed. "There's food," he said. "Good." Silence settled over the cabin, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the shriek of wind outside. Ethan sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. Victoria remained standing, her back to the fire, her expression distant. "You don't have to stay over there." Ethan said quietly. She glanced at him. I'm fine. You're freezing. I said I'm fine. He didn't push it. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt strange in the flickering firelight. Finally, Victoria moved. She sat down in the chair near the fireplace, pulled her knees up to her chest, and stared into the flames. I hate the mountains, she said. Ethan looked up. What? I hate the mountains. I hate the cold. I hate corporate retreats. She laughed, but it was hollow. And yet here I am. Why'd you come? Because it's expected. She didn't look at him. Because if I don't show up, people think I don't care. And if they think I don't care, they start wondering if I'm the right person to run this company. You built the company. Doesn't matter. The second you show weakness, someone's ready to take your place. She paused. You should know that better than anyone. Ethan frowned. What's that supposed to mean? You're on thin ice with Belmont. Your boss wants to replace you. I've been fighting to keep you on the project. The words hit him like a slap. You... what? You're good at your job, Walker. You're just terrible at asking for help. And in this company, that's the same as failing. He didn't know what to say. Victoria stood and walked to the window again, her reflection ghostly in the dark glass. You have a daughter, right? Ethan's throat tightened. Yeah. How old? 7. What's her name? Maya. Victoria nodded slowly. That's why you're drowning. You're trying to do everything alone. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. She turned to face him. You just don't like the options. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because she was right. The fire popped. A log shifted and fell. Ethan stood and added more wood, watching the flames climb higher. Why do you care? He asked quietly. What? Why do you care if I keep my job or not? You don't know me. Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, because I know what it's like to be alone. Nice. The power went out at midnight. 1 second, the cabin lights were on. The next, darkness swallowed everything. Ethan sat up in bed, heart pounding. What the? Generator must have failed, Victoria said from somewhere in the dark. He fumbled for his flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the blackness, landing on Victoria's face. She was still in the chair by the fireplace, wrapped in a blanket. You didn't sleep? He asked. Couldn't. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood. The temperature had already dropped. He could see his breath in the flashlight beam. We need to keep the fire going, Victoria said. That's the only heat we have now. Ethan crossed to the fireplace and added more wood. The flames surged, casting wild shadows on the walls. Victoria moved to the bed and sat down, still wrapped in the blanket. You should get some sleep. I'm not tired. Liar! He almost smiled. They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them, the storm raging outside. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. Depends on the question. Why are you really here, on this retreat? You could have sent someone else. Victoria pulled the blanket tighter. Because if I don't show my face, people think I'm untouchable, disconnected. And maybe I am, but I can't afford to let them see it. That sounds exhausting. It is. So why do it? She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. Because it's the only thing I know how to do. Ethan understood that, maybe more than he wanted to. What about you? Victoria asked. Why are you here? You clearly didn't want to come. Because I need this job. Because Maya needs stability. Because I can't fail her. You're not failing her. You don't know that. I know you're here, Victoria said, sitting in a freezing cabin in the middle of a blizzard, worrying about a project and a daughter and a life you're barely holding together. That's not failure. That's just... She paused. That's just being human. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan looked down at his hands. I don't feel human most days. I feel like a machine. Wake up, get Maya ready, go to work, pick her up, make dinner, put her to bed, answer emails, pass out, repeat. And you think I'm any different? Victoria's voice was quiet. I wake up at 5. I'm at the office by 6. I work until 9, sometimes 10. I go home to an empty apartment. I eat dinner alone. I answer emails until I can't keep my eyes open. And then I do it again. At least you chose that life. Did I? She laughed bitterly. Or did I just get so good at being alone that I forgot how to be anything else? Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, not as his CEO, not as the woman who held his career in her hands, just as a person. And he saw the same exhaustion he felt every day staring back at him. "We're a mess," he said. "Yes," Victoria agreed. "We are." The fire crackled, the wind howled, and for the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel completely alone. Thus, by 2 a.m., the cold was unbearable. Even with the fire roaring, the cabin felt like a freezer. Ethan's teeth chattered. His fingers were numb. Victoria had stopped pretending she was fine. She sat on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, shivering violently. "This isn't working," Ethan said. "I'm aware." He stood and grabbed both blankets from the bed. "Come here." "What?" "We need to share body heat. It's basic survival." Victoria hesitated. I'm not going to let you freeze to death because you're too proud to sit next to me." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she moved. They sat side by side on the floor in front of the fireplace, blankets wrapped around both of them. It was awkward at first. Two people who barely knew each other, pressed together out of necessity. But slowly, warmth returned. "Better?" Ethan asked. "Better?" Victoria admitted. They sat in silence, watching the fire. "Tell me about Maya," Victoria said quietly. Ethan smiled despite himself. "She's everything. Smart, funny, stubborn as hell." "Wonder where she gets that?" He laughed. "Her mom, probably." Victoria glanced at him. "You don't talk about her. Maya's mom." "Not much to say. We were young. We weren't ready. She left when Maya was 2. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We're better off." "Are you?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean?" "You're killing yourself to give Maya a good life. But you're so busy surviving, you're not actually living. How is that better?" Ethan didn't answer because he didn't have one. Victoria sighed. "I'm not judging. I'm the last person who should talk about work-life balance. She paused. "I see myself in you, and it scares me." "Why?" "Because I don't want to end up at 60, running a company I don't even like anymore, with no one to share it with." "Then don't." She looked at him. "It's not that simple, isn't it?" "No," Victoria said firmly. "It's not. I've spent 20 years building this company. It's who I am. If I walk away, what's left?" "Maybe something better." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand." Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "When I was 25, I had nothing. No money, no connections, just an idea and a laptop. I worked 18-hour days for 3 years. I gave up friends, relationships, any chance at a normal life. And it worked. I built something. I proved I could do it." She stared into the fire. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I was doing it, and now I'm trapped in the thing I created." Ethan understood that more than she knew. "You're not trapped," he said quietly. "Yes, I am." "Then break free." She looked at him, something unreadable in her eyes. "How?" "I don't know. But sitting here, freezing in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, maybe that's a start." Victoria almost smiled. "That's the worst motivational speech I've ever heard." "I'm a project manager, not a life coach." This time, she did smile, and for a moment, the cold didn't matter. At some point, they both fell asleep. Ethan woke to pale gray light filtering through the window. The fire had died down to embers. The storm had stopped. Victoria was still asleep next to him, her head resting against his shoulder. He didn't move. For a few minutes, he just sat there, listening to her breathe, feeling the warmth of another person next to him for the first time in years. Then she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly. She blinked, disoriented, then seemed to realize where she was. She pulled away quickly. "Sorry." "It's fine." She stood and moved to the window, putting distance between them. "Storm's over." "Yeah." Outside, the world was buried in white. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the snow in shades of gold and pink. It was beautiful. It was also the end. Victoria turned to face him. "We should head back." "Yeah," Ethan said again. Neither of them moved. "Last night," Victoria started. "Doesn't have to mean anything," Ethan said quickly. We were cold. We survived. That's it. She looked at him for a long moment. Right. But the way she said it made him think she didn't believe it any more than he did. They packed in silence, pulled on coats and gloves, checked the fire one last time. At the door, Victoria paused. Walker, Ethan, he said. My name is Ethan. She nodded slowly. Ethan, what happened here? Stays here, he finished. Does it? He didn't know how to answer that, so he didn't. They stepped out into the snow and started the long walk back. The walk back took 40 minutes, and neither of them said a word. Ethan's legs burned from pushing through waist-deep snow. His face was raw from the wind. But the physical pain was easier to focus on than the knot in his chest that had been there since they left the cabin. Victoria walked ahead of him, her posture rigid, like she was marching into a board meeting instead of trudging through a blizzard's aftermath. She didn't look back once. When the main lodge finally came into view, Ethan felt relief and dread in equal measure. The parking lot was chaos. Buses lined up, engines running, employees loading luggage with the frantic energy of people who'd survived something they didn't want to talk about. Snowplows had cleared a path down the mountain, and everyone seemed desperate to take it. Jennifer stood near the entrance with a clipboard, checking people off like she was counting survivors. When she saw Ethan and Victoria emerge from the tree line, her face went pale. Oh, thank God, she said, rushing over. We were about to send a search team. Are you two okay? We're fine, Victoria said curtly. Just cold. Cabin 7 lost power, Jennifer said, her voice pitching higher. We had no way to contact you. I'm so sorry, Ms. Hale. This was a complete failure of protocol. It's fine, Victoria interrupted. We survived. That's what matters. Jennifer looked like she might cry from relief. Your bus leaves in 20 minutes. I'll make sure your things are loaded. Victoria nodded and walked past her without another word. Ethan stood there, wet and freezing, watching her disappear into the lodge. You okay? Jennifer asked him. Yeah, he said. I'm fine. He wasn't sure he believed it. Inside, the lodge was overheated and loud. People clustered in groups, swapping stories about the storm, their voices overlapping in a way that made Ethan's head pound. He grabbed his duffel from the storage room and headed straight for the bathroom. The mirror showed a stranger. His face was red and chapped, his hair a mess, his eyes hollow from lack of sleep. He splashed cold water on his face and tried to pull himself together. His phone had signal now. A flood of messages came through all at once. His mom, his boss, Marcus, a missed call from Maya's school, and one text from a number he didn't recognize. Unknown. We don't talk about it. His stomach dropped. He stared at the message for a long time before he realized it was from Victoria. She must have gotten his number from the company directory. He typed out a reply 3 times and deleted it each time. Finally, he just wrote, understood. She didn't respond. Ethan shoved the phone in his pocket and left the bathroom. The bus ride back to Seattle was excruciating. He sat in the same seat he'd had on the way up, near the back, alone. Victoria sat near the front with the senior leadership team, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. She didn't look at him once during the 2.5-hour drive. Ethan stared out the window and watched the mountains shrink in the distance. By the time they pulled into the Cascade Development parking lot, it was almost noon. The sky was gray and heavy with the promise of more rain. Seattle weather. Normal weather. The kind of weather that didn't trap you in a cabin with your CEO and force you to confront things you'd spent years avoiding. Ethan grabbed his bag and got off the bus without looking back. His car was covered in a thin layer of frost. He threw his duffel in the trunk and sat in the driver's seat for a long time, hands on the wheel, not moving. His phone buzzed. Mom, Maya's asking when you're coming. Should I tell her soon or after lunch? Ethan, on my way now. He started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. He didn't let himself think about Victoria until he was halfway across the city. And when he did, he forced the thoughts away. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. His mother's apartment was in the same complex where Ethan had grown up, a low-income housing development on the edge of Beacon Hill. The buildings were beige and ugly, the kind of place that looked the same whether it was 1995 or 2025. Ethan pulled into a visitor spot and climbed the stairs to the second floor. His mom opened the door before he could knock. You look terrible, she said. Good to see you too, Ma. She pulled him into a hug anyway. Patricia Walker was 63, small and fierce. With graying hair she refused to die and a grip that could still make Ethan feel like a kid. "Maya's in the living room," she said, stepping back. "She made you a welcome home card." Of course she did. He walked into the small living room and found his daughter sprawled on the floor, surrounded by crayons and construction paper. "Daddy!" she shrieked, jumping up. He caught her mid-leap and lifted her into the air. She wrapped her arms around his neck and squeezed so hard he couldn't breathe. "I missed you," she said into his shoulder. "I missed you too, kiddo." "Did you have fun?" "Not really." She pulled back and looked at him seriously. "Was it boring?" "Very boring." "That's what Grandma said work trips are." "Grandma's right." Maya wriggled out of his arms and grabbed a piece of paper from the floor. "Look, I made this for you." The card was covered in glitter and stickers. In wobbly letters, it said, "Welcome home, Daddy. I love you." Ethan's throat tightened. "This is perfect." "I know," Maya said matter-of-factly. "Can we get ice cream now?" He laughed despite himself. "Yeah, we can get ice cream." His mom appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "You sure you're okay? You look like you didn't sleep." "I didn't." "Storm that bad?" "Something like that." She gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but she let it go. "Well, you're home now. That's what matters." Ethan nodded, even though he wasn't sure he believed it either. They left 20 minutes later, Maya chattering nonstop in the back seat about everything she'd done over the weekend. Ethan listened and made the right noises in the right places, but his mind kept drifting back to the cabin, to the fire, to Victoria sitting next to him, close enough that he could feel her warmth, to the way she'd looked at him in the morning light like she was seeing him for the first time. He gripped the steering wheel tighter and forced the memory away. The ice cream shop was crowded with families enjoying the last bit of weekend freedom before Monday arrived. Ethan ordered chocolate for Maya and nothing for himself. They sat in a booth by the window, and Maya swung her legs while she ate, her face smeared with chocolate within 30 seconds. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you like your job?" The question caught him off guard. "Why do you ask?" She shrugged, licking her spoon. "You're always sad when you come home." "I'm not sad." "Yes, you are. You make this face." She scrunched up her face in what was probably supposed to be an imitation of him. Ethan almost laughed, but the truth of it hit too hard. "I'm just tired, kiddo. That's all." "Grandma says you work too much." "Grandma says a lot of things. She's usually right, though." "When did you get so smart?" Maya grinned. "I was born smart." He reached over and wiped chocolate off her chin with a napkin. "Yeah, you were." They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence. Ethan watched his daughter and tried to remember the last time he'd felt this calm. It didn't last. His phone buzzed on the table. A work email. Subject line: Belmont Project Review. Monday, 9 a.m. His stomach dropped. "Daddy?" He looked up. Maya was watching him with those big, serious eyes that were too old for a 7-year-old. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he lied. "I'm okay." Monday morning came too fast. Ethan dropped Maya off at school, sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes trying to calm his nerves, then drove to the office. The Cascade Development Building loomed over downtown Seattle like a glass and steel monument to corporate ambition. Ethan had worked here for 6 years and still felt like an outsider every time he walked through the doors. He took the elevator to the 8th floor and headed straight for the conference room. His boss, Derek Lang, was already there, mid-50s, balding, with the kind of permanent frown that came from decades of middle management. He looked up when Ethan entered. "Close the door," Derek said. Ethan's pulse spiked. He closed the door and sat down. Derek slid a folder across the table. "Belmont's a mess." "I'm handling it." "Are you?" "Because the client's threatening to pull the contract. The vendor pushed the timeline again, and I've got the executive team breathing down my neck asking why we're 3 weeks behind." "I can fix it." "How?" Ethan opened the folder. Timelines, budget projections, vendor correspondence. All of it looked worse on paper than it did in his head. "I'll renegotiate with the vendor," he said. "Push for expedited delivery. Adjust the internal schedule to absorb the delay. And if they say no, then I find a new vendor. Derek leaned back in his chair, studying him. You know what the problem is, Walker. You're good at this job, but you're stretched too thin. You can't manage a high-stakes project when you're running on 3 hours of sleep and juggling single-parent life. Ethan's jaw tightened. My personal life doesn't affect my work, doesn't it? The words hung in the air like an accusation. I'll fix it, Ethan said again, his voice harder this time. Derek sighed. You've got 2 weeks. If this project isn't back on track by then, I'm reassigning it. Understood. Ethan left the conference room feeling like he'd been punched in the chest. He went back to his desk, opened his laptop, and stared at the Belmont file. Numbers and schedules and contingency plans that all felt impossibly far away. His phone buzzed. Victoria. My office, now. His heart stopped. He closed the laptop, stood, and walked to the elevator like a man heading to his own execution. Victoria's office was on the top floor, behind a glass wall that overlooked the entire city. Her assistant waved him through without a word. Ethan stepped inside. Victoria sat behind her desk, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back, every inch the CEO who'd built an empire. She looked nothing like the woman who'd sat next to him by the fire 2 nights ago, shivering and vulnerable and human. Close the door, she said. He did. Sit. He sat. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just looked at him with those sharp, unreadable eyes. I talked to Derek, she finally said. I know. He wants to pull you from Belmont. I can fix it. Can you? Yes. Prove it. Ethan met her gaze. Give me 2 weeks. Derek already gave you 2 weeks. Then why am I here? Victoria leaned back in her chair. Because I want to know if you're actually going to fix it or if you're just going to burn out trying. I don't burn out. Everyone burns out, Ethan. The use of his first name felt like a slap, or maybe a lifeline. He couldn't tell. What do you want me to say? He asked. I want you to be honest. Can you save this project without destroying yourself in the process? He didn't answer. Victoria sighed. That's what I thought. She stood and walked to the window, her back to him. I'm assigning you a support team, 2 junior project managers. They'll handle the vendor negotiations and client communications. You focus on strategy and execution. I don't need... Yes, you do. She turned to face him. And if you argue with me, I'll pull you from the project myself. Ethan clenched his jaw. Fine. Good. Silence stretched between them. Is that all? He asked. Victoria hesitated. For just a second, something flickered across her face, something that looked almost like uncertainty. Then it was gone. That's all, she said. Ethan stood and walked to the door. Ethan? He stopped, his hand on the handle. Don't make me regret this. He looked back at her. I won't. He left before she could say anything else. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Ethan worked 14-hour days, coordinating with the support team Victoria had assigned, renegotiating contracts, restructuring timelines. He barely saw Maya except for hurried breakfasts and bedtime stories he was too exhausted to remember. His mom started showing up at his apartment unannounced with food and lectures about self-care. He nodded and ate the food and ignored the lectures. The project started to come together, slowly, painfully, but it came together. And through it all, he didn't see Victoria once. She didn't come to the project meetings, didn't stop by his desk, didn't send cryptic texts. It was like the cabin had never happened. Ethan told himself that was a good thing. He almost believed it. On Friday of the second week, Derek called him into his office. Belmont's back on track, Derek said without preamble. I know. Clients happy, vendors cooperating, timeline solid. Good. Derek leaned back in his chair. I'm taking you off my watch list. Ethan exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 weeks. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Hale. She went to bat for you. Derek paused. I don't know what you did on that retreat, but she's been watching this project like a hawk. Made it clear you weren't going anywhere. Ethan's chest tightened. She did? Yeah. So whatever it was, keep doing it. Ethan left Derek's office in a daze. He went back to his desk, sat down, and stared at his computer screen without seeing it. Victoria had protected him, even after they'd agreed to pretend nothing happened, even after 2 weeks of silence. His phone buzzed. Victoria, conference room B, 5 p.m. He looked at the clock. It was 4:47. His heart started racing. At exactly 5 o'clock, Ethan walked into conference room B. Victoria was already there, standing by the window, arms crossed. "Close the door," she said. He closed it. "I heard Belmont's back on track." "It is." "Good." She turned to face him. "I also heard you worked yourself half to death to make it happen." "I did what I had to do." "That's the problem, Ethan. You always do what you have to do. You never ask what you want to do." "What I want doesn't matter." "Why not?" "Because I have a daughter. I have a job. I have responsibilities." "And I don't?" Victoria's voice rose slightly. "You think I don't have responsibilities? You think I don't wake up every day with the weight of 800 employees on my shoulders?" "That's different." "How?" "Because you chose it." The words came out louder than he meant them to. Victoria stared at him. "And you think I don't regret that choice every single day?" Ethan froze. She looked away, her jaw tight. "I spent 20 years building this company. I gave up everything. And for what? So I could sit in an office alone and pretend I'm happy?" "Victoria, don't." She held up a hand. "Just don't." Silence filled the room. "Why am I here?" Ethan asked quietly. Victoria turned back to the window. "Because I can't stop thinking about that cabin." His breath caught. "I keep telling myself it was just survival," she continued. "Just two people stuck in a bad situation. But it wasn't." "Was it?" Ethan didn't answer because he didn't know how. Victoria laughed, but it was hollow. "We're both cowards." "What?" "We're both so terrified of wanting something that we'd rather pretend it doesn't exist." She looked at him. "I spent 2 weeks avoiding you because I didn't know what to say, and you spent 2 weeks avoiding me for the same reason." "I wasn't avoiding you." "Yes, you were." He couldn't argue with that. Victoria crossed the room slowly, stopping a few feet away from him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "I don't know what this is," she said quietly, "but I know I can't ignore it anymore." Ethan's heart pounded. This can't happen. You're my boss. I know all the reasons why this is a terrible idea," Victoria interrupted. "I've been listing them for 2 weeks. But I'm tired, Ethan. I'm tired of doing the smart thing. I'm tired of being alone." "So am I," he admitted. She reached out and took his hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it felt like the ground shifting beneath his feet. "I don't know how this works," she said. "I don't know if it can work, but I'd like to try." Ethan looked down at their joined hands. "What about the company, the hierarchy, everything that makes this impossible?" "I'll figure it out." "Just like that?" "No, not just like that. It'll be messy and complicated and probably a disaster." She met his eyes. "But I'd rather risk the disaster than spend the rest of my life wondering what if." Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was insane, but he didn't. Instead, he squeezed her hand. "Okay," he said. "Okay. Let's try." Victoria smiled, a real smile, small and uncertain and completely genuine. And for the first time since the cabin, Ethan felt like he could breathe. They stood there for a long moment, just holding hands, neither of them sure what came next. Finally, Victoria stepped back. "We should probably set some ground rules." "Probably." "No one at work can know, not yet." "Agreed." "We keep it professional here, no special treatment, no favoritism." "I wouldn't expect any." "And we take it slow. Figure out what this is before we blow up both our lives." Ethan nodded. "Slow. I can do slow." "Good." They looked at each other. "This is terrifying," Victoria said. "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "It really is." She laughed, a real laugh this time, not the hollow corporate one, and Ethan realized he'd never heard her laugh before. "I should go," he said. "Maya's waiting." "Right, of course." He walked to the door, then stopped. "Victoria?" "Yeah?" "Thank you. For protecting the project. For giving me a chance." She smiled. "Thank you for not letting me freeze to death." He left before he could do something stupid like kiss her. The elevator ride down felt like floating. Ethan walked to his car in a daze, got in, and sat there for a full minute before starting the engine. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Dinner tomorrow? Somewhere off the beaten path. He stared at the message. Then he typed, I'll have to find a sitter for Maya. Victoria. Take your time. Let me know. He put the phone down and started driving. Halfway home, it hit him what he'd just agreed to. A date. With his CEO. With a woman who could destroy his career with one word. With a woman who'd sat next to him by a fire and told him things she probably never told anyone. What the hell am I doing? He said out loud, but he was smiling when he said it. When he got home, Maya was waiting by the door, her backpack still on. Daddy, you're late. I know, I'm sorry. Long day. She squinted at him. You look different. Different how? I don't know. Less sad. He crouched down to her level. Maybe I'm just happy to see you. You're always happy to see me. True. She hugged him, and he held on a little longer than usual. Can we have pizza for dinner? She asked. Sure. And can I stay up late? Absolutely not. Worth a try. They ordered pizza and ate on the couch while Maya told him about her week in excruciating detail. Ethan listened and made the right noises and tried not to think about tomorrow. But when he tucked Maya into bed that night, she looked up at him with those serious eyes again. Daddy? Yeah? Are you happy? The question knocked the air out of him. I'm working on it, he said honestly. She nodded like that was a perfectly reasonable answer. Okay, good. Why do you ask? Because Grandma says you deserve to be happy, and I think so too. Ethan's throat tightened. You're pretty smart, you know that? I know, Maya said, completely serious. He kissed her forehead. Good night, kiddo. Night, Daddy. He turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her settle into sleep. Then he went to the living room, pulled out his phone, and typed out a message. Ethan. Found a sitter. Tomorrow works. Victoria's reply came almost instantly. Victoria, 7 p.m. I'll send you the address. Ethan set the phone down and leaned back against the couch. He had no idea what he was doing, no idea if this would work, no idea if he was making the biggest mistake of his life or the best decision. But for the first time in years, he was willing to find out. The restaurant was in Fremont, tucked down a side street Ethan had driven past 100 times without noticing. Small, quiet, the kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be seen. He parked 2 blocks away and sat in his car for 5 minutes, trying to convince himself this was a good idea. His phone buzzed. Victoria. I'm here. Corner booth in the back. He took a breath, got out of the car, and walked. The restaurant was dimly lit, all exposed brick and candlelight. Jazz played softly in the background. Ethan spotted Victoria immediately, even though she'd chosen the most secluded table in the place. She wore a simple black sweater and jeans. He'd never seen her in jeans, and her hair was down, falling past her shoulders. She looked up when he approached, and something in her expression softened. You came, she said. Did you think I wouldn't? I wasn't sure. He sat down across from her. I wasn't sure either. A waiter appeared, asked about drinks, disappeared again. The silence between them felt different than it had in the cabin. Less desperate. More uncertain. I've never done this before, Victoria said suddenly. Gone to dinner? Gone to dinner with someone who works for me. She paused. Gone to dinner with anyone, actually? Not in a long time. Ethan picked up his water glass just to have something to do with his hands. When was the last time? 4 years, maybe 5. She looked down at the menu without really seeing it. I went on a date with a venture capitalist my board introduced me to. He spent 2 hours talking about his portfolio and asking if I'd consider selling the company. Sounds romantic. It was efficient. She smiled slightly. I knew by the appetizer it wasn't going anywhere, but I stayed through dessert because that's what you're supposed to do. You don't have to stay through dessert with me if you don't want to. I want to, she said quietly. The waiter returned with wine neither of them remembered ordering. They gave him their food orders without looking at the menu, both picking the first thing they saw. When he left, Victoria leaned back in her chair. Tell me about Maya. What do you want to know? Everything. What she's like, what she loves, what drives you crazy. Ethan felt himself relax slightly. Maya was safe territory. She's stubborn, smart. She asks 1,000 questions a day and actually listens to the answers. She's obsessed with space right now, wants to be an astronaut. Like her dad? I wanted to be a firefighter. Victoria laughed. Of course you did. What about you? I wanted to run a company. At 7? At 7, I wanted to run a lemonade stand. By 12, I wanted to run a company. She took a sip of wine. I was a weird kid. Driven isn't weird. It is when you're 12 and your classmates are worried about boys and you're worried about market share. Ethan studied her across the table. You ever regret it, starting so young? Every day, she said without hesitation. And not at all. It's both things at once. That doesn't make sense. Most things don't. Their food arrived. They ate slowly, the conversation drifting between safe topics: Seattle traffic, bad movies, favorite foods. But underneath it all was the constant awareness of what they weren't saying, what they were doing, what it meant. Halfway through the meal, Victoria set down her fork. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you say yes to this? Ethan considered the question. Honestly? Please. Because I'm tired of being careful. I've spent 7 years making the safe choice every single time. Safe job, safe apartment, safe life. And I'm exhausted. He met her eyes. That night in the cabin was the first time in years I felt like I wasn't just surviving. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I know that feeling. Do you? I built an empire and forgot to build a life. And then I got trapped in a cabin with someone who reminded me what it felt like to be human instead of a CEO. She picked up her wine glass. So yes, I know that feeling. Is that what this is? An escape? Maybe. She didn't look away. Would that be so bad? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. They finished dinner and walked outside into the cool November air. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that only existed in Seattle neighborhoods after 9 p.m. I parked 2 blocks away, Ethan said. So did I. They walked together, shoulders almost touching, neither of them speaking. At the corner, Victoria stopped. I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I. This is a terrible idea. Probably. She turned to face him, but I don't want it to end. Me neither. Victoria stepped closer, close enough that he could see the uncertainty in her eyes, close enough that he could feel the heat of her. Ethan. He kissed her. It wasn't planned, wasn't smooth. He just leaned in and pressed his lips to hers, and for a second she went perfectly still. Then she kissed him back. Her hands came up to his chest, fisting in his jacket. His arms went around her waist, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, turned urgent, like they were both trying to prove something they couldn't say out loud. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. That was, Victoria started. Yeah. We shouldn't have. I know. She laughed shakily. We're really bad at this. The worst. But neither of them moved away. I should go, Victoria said, but she didn't let go of his jacket. You should. Maya's waiting. She's asleep. My mom's staying over. Victoria looked up at him. Then why are you in such a hurry to leave? I'm not. Good. They stood there on the corner, holding on to each other like letting go meant falling. Finally, Victoria stepped back. We need to be smart about this. I thought you were tired of being smart. I am, but I'm also the CEO of a company with very strict fraternization policies that I wrote myself. She ran a hand through her hair. If anyone finds out about this before we figure out what it is, it could destroy both our careers. Ethan's stomach dropped. You're right. I usually am. So what do we do? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. We take it slow, we're careful, and we figure out if this is real or just, she gestured vaguely. Cabin fever. You think that's all it is? I don't know what it is, do you? Ethan thought about the past 2 weeks, about the way he couldn't stop thinking about her, about the way his chest felt lighter when she texted, about the way she looked at him like he was more than just an employee. No, he admitted. But I want to find out. Victoria nodded slowly. Me too. They exchanged a look that said more than words could. Then Victoria turned and walked toward her car, and Ethan watched her go. He didn't move until her taillights disappeared around the corner. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in restraint. At work, they barely spoke. When they did, it was all business, project updates, budget reviews, the kind of professional interactions that gave nothing away. Ethan sat through meetings where Victoria commanded the room with the same cool authority she always had, and no one suspected a thing. But there were moments. A glance across the conference room that lasted half a second too long. Her hand brushing his when she passed him a document, a text that came through at midnight. Can't sleep. You? And his reply, same. They managed 3 more dinners over those 2 weeks. Different restaurants, different neighborhoods, always careful. They talked about everything and nothing. Victoria told him about growing up in Portland with parents who thought her ambitions were phase. Ethan told her about Maya's mother, about the night she left and the note she'd written that just said, "I can't do this." "Did you love her?" Victoria asked one night. "I thought I did, but I think I just loved the idea of not being alone." "And now?" "Now I know the difference." Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just existing in the same space. It was on the 4th dinner at a Thai place in Ballard that everything shifted. They were halfway through pad Thai when Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed. "I have to take this," she said. "Go ahead." She stepped outside. Through the window, Ethan could see her pacing, her free hand gesturing sharply. She was angry. He could tell even from a distance. When she came back inside, her face was tight. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Board meeting got moved up. Tomorrow morning. They want to discuss the quarterly numbers." "That's good, right? Numbers are strong." "Numbers are always strong. That's not what this is about." She sat down heavily. "They're going to push for an acquisition." "What?" "There's a tech firm out of San Francisco that's been sniffing around for months. They want to buy Cascade Development, fold us into their portfolio." Her jaw clenched. "And half the board thinks we should take the offer." "What do you think?" "I think I didn't spend 20 years building this company just to hand it over to some Silicon Valley vultures who'll gut it for parts." Ethan had never seen her like this, raw and furious and barely holding it together. "What can I do?" he asked. She looked at him like he'd said something strange. "What? How can I help?" Victoria's expression softened. "You can't. This is above your pay grade." "So promote me." She almost smiled. "It doesn't work like that." "Then tell me what you need." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I need to not be alone tonight." Ethan's heart kicked hard against his ribs. "Okay. Okay? My place or yours?" Victoria exhaled slowly. "Yours. If that's all right." "It's all right." They paid the check and left. The drive back to Ethan's apartment was silent. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them coherent. This was crossing a line. This was real. This was happening. His apartment was small and cluttered with Maya's drawings and laundry he hadn't folded. He unlocked the door and flipped on the light, suddenly aware of how little he had to offer someone like Victoria Hale. "Sorry about the mess," he said. "I don't care about the mess." She walked past him into the living room, looking around like she was seeing a museum exhibit. Her eyes landed on the drawings covering the fridge. "Maya's?" she asked. "Yeah, she's prolific." Victoria stepped closer, studying them. "She's talented. She gets it from her mom. Or from you." Ethan shook his head. "I can barely draw stick figures." Victoria turned to face him. "I meant the dedication, the focus. That's all you." He didn't know what to say to that. She crossed the room slowly, stopping just in front of him. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." "I'm terrified." "Of the board meeting?" "Of this." She gestured between them. "Of wanting something I'm not supposed to have. Of screwing it up." Ethan reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're not the only one who's terrified." "No?" "I'm about to lose my mind over here." She smiled slightly. "That's comforting." "Isn't it?" Victoria leaned in and kissed him. This kiss was different than the one on the street corner, slower, deeper, like they had all the time in the world instead of stolen hours between responsibilities. Ethan's hands found her waist, pulling her closer. She made a small sound against his mouth that broke something loose in his chest. They moved toward this couch, or maybe the couch moved toward them. He wasn't sure. All he knew was that suddenly they were tangled together, her weight pressing him into the cushions, her hands in his hair, his hands everywhere else. "Ethan," she breathed against his neck. Yeah? Is Maya at my mom's? All night. Good. They stayed like that for a long time, kissing and touching and learning the shape of each other. It was desperate and messy, and nothing like Ethan had imagined. It was better. Eventually, they moved to his bedroom. The sheets were clean, at least. Small victories. Victoria stood at the edge of the bed, suddenly hesitant. We don't have to, Ethan started. I want to. You're sure? I haven't been sure about anything in years. She looked at him. But I'm sure about this. He crossed the room and kissed her again, and the rest of the world fell away. Later, hours later, or maybe minutes, time had stopped making sense. They lay tangled in his sheets, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. I should probably go, Victoria said, but she didn't move. You could stay. That's a bad idea. Most of our ideas are bad. She laughed softly. True. They were quiet for a while. Outside, rain started to fall, tapping against the window. Can I ask you something? Ethan said. What are you going to tell the board tomorrow? Victoria was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then she said, I'm going to tell them no. Yeah? Yeah, this is my company. I built it, and I'm not handing it over to people who see it as a line item on a spreadsheet. She shifted slightly, propping herself up on one elbow to look at him. I know what I want, Ethan, and it's not an exit strategy. What is it? She leaned down and kissed him. I'm still figuring that out. He pulled her back down against him. Take your time. That's a luxury I don't usually have. Then take it anyway. She smiled against his chest. You're a bad influence. I've been told. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the rain drumming a rhythm on the roof. Ethan woke up at 6 to his alarm blaring and Victoria already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed. What time is it? He mumbled. Early. I have to go. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. Board meeting. Yeah. She looked nervous. Ethan had never seen her nervous before. You're going to be fine, he said. You don't know that. Yes, I do. You're Victoria Hale. You don't lose. She almost smiled. I lose all the time. I'm just good at hiding it. He reached out and took her hand. Then don't hide it today. Tell them the truth. Tell them what you want. It's not that simple, isn't it? She squeezed his hand, then stood. I have to go. Victoria. She leaned down and kissed him. I'll call you later. Then she was gone. Ethan sat in bed for a long time, staring at the space where she'd been. At work, the day dragged. Ethan tried to focus on Belmont, on vendor contracts and timeline adjustments, but his mind kept drifting to Victoria in that boardroom, fighting for her company. He checked his phone every 10 minutes. No messages. At 2 p.m., Marcus stopped by his desk. You see the email? Ethan's stomach dropped. What email? All company, board meeting update. Marcus frowned. You okay? You look like you're going to puke. Ethan pulled up his email, scanned the message. The board of directors met today to discuss strategic opportunities for Cascade development. After careful consideration, we have decided to remain an independent company and pursue organic growth strategies. CEO. Victoria Hale will address the full staff tomorrow at the quarterly town hall. He read it 3 times. She'd won. That's good, right? Marcus said. Means no layoffs, no corporate overlords. Yeah, Ethan said distantly. It's good. Marcus left. Ethan sat there staring at his screen. His phone buzzed. Victoria. My office. Now. He took the elevator to the top floor. Her assistant waved him through without a word, like she'd been expecting him. Victoria stood by the window, her back to the door. She didn't turn when he entered. Close it, she said. He did. How'd it go? He asked. I won. I saw the email. She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. Ethan crossed the room in 3 steps. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. She laughed, but it came out broken. I told them I wouldn't sell, that this company was mine and I wasn't giving it up. And they pushed back hard, told me I was being emotional, irrational, that I was letting personal feelings cloud my judgment. But you won. I won because I threatened to quit, Because I made it clear that without me there is no cascade development. Her voice cracked. But they're right, Ethan. I am letting personal feelings cloud my judgment, because all I could think about in that boardroom was you, was last night, was the fact that for the first time in my life I have something I don't want to lose. Ethan's throat tightened. Victoria, I'm falling for you, she said, and it terrifies me. He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. I'm falling for you too. This is a disaster. I know. We work together. You report to me technically. This violates every rule I've ever made. I know. And I don't care. She looked up at him, her eyes fierce. I don't care about the rules anymore. I just care about you. He kissed her. Slow and deep and full of everything he couldn't say. When they broke apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. What do we do now? She whispered. We figure it out. How? I don't know. But we do it together. She nodded. Together. They stood there for a long time, holding each other in the middle of her office, the city sprawling below them. I need to tell you something, Ethan said. What? Maya asked me if I was happy. Victoria pulled back slightly to look at him. What did you say? I said I was working on it, he smiled. But I think I am now. Because of me? Because of you. Because of this. Because I finally feel like I'm living instead of just surviving. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. You're going to make me cry in my own office. Is that a bad thing? It's a terrible thing. I have a reputation to maintain. He wiped a tear from her cheek. Your secret's safe with me. She laughed and kissed him again. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang. Voices echoed in the hallway. The business of cascade development continued like it always did. But in that office, for those few minutes, the world was just the two of them. And it was enough. The town hall meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Thursday, and by 9:30, the auditorium was already packed. Ethan sat in his usual spot 3 rows from the back, laptop open, trying to look like he cared about quarterly projections. Marcus sat next to him, scrolling through his phone and complaining about the coffee. Think she'll mention the acquisition attempt? Marcus asked. Probably not, Ethan said, even though he had no idea. He hadn't spoken to Victoria since Tuesday afternoon in her office. They'd agreed to keep their distance at work, to not give anyone a reason to look twice. But the silence was killing him. He'd checked his phone maybe 200 times in the past 36 hours. At exactly 10 a.m., Victoria walked onto the stage. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than Ethan's car, her hair pulled back in that severe way that meant business. She looked untouchable again, like the woman who'd built an empire and could dismantle you with a glance. But Ethan saw the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she gripped the podium just a little too tight. Good morning, she said, her voice carrying across the auditorium. I know there's been speculation about this week's board meeting, so let's address it directly. We were approached with an acquisition offer, a substantial one, and we turned it down. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cascade Development is not for sale, Victoria continued. Not now, not ever. This company was built on the principle that we do things differently, that we prioritize people over profit margins, that we create value instead of extracting it. She paused. And I intend to keep it that way. Scattered applause broke out. Victoria waited for it to die down. That said, staying independent means staying competitive. We need to innovate faster, work smarter, and be willing to take risks other companies won't. Over the next quarter, we're launching 3 new initiatives designed to position us as industry leaders, not followers. She went through the initiatives one by one. New project management software, an expanded client services division, and a mentorship program pairing senior leadership with mid-level employees. Ethan listened with half his attention, the other half focused on the way Victoria's voice wavered slightly when she talked about mentorship, like it meant something more than corporate strategy. When the presentation ended, she opened the floor for questions. Someone asked about budget allocations. Someone else asked about hiring timelines. Standard questions, standard answers. Then a woman in the front row raised her hand. Yes? Victoria said. I was wondering about work-life balance initiatives, the woman said. A lot of us are feeling stretched thin. Are there plans to address that? Victoria's expression didn't change, but Ethan saw the slight shift in her posture. That's an excellent question, and the honest answer is that I'm still figuring it out. The room went quiet. I've spent most of my career believing that success required sacrifice, Victoria continued, that if you wanted to build something meaningful, you had to give up everything else. And I've watched talented people burn out because they believed the same thing. She paused. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm committed to finding a better way for all of us. The woman nodded, seemingly satisfied. Marcus leaned over and whispered, Did she just admit she doesn't know something? Looks like it, Ethan said. That's new. It was new. And it was terrifying and honest, and exactly why Ethan was falling for her. After the meeting, people filed out in waves. Ethan hung back, pretending to check emails while the auditorium emptied. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Rooftop, 20 minutes. He waited 15, then took the stairs to the top floor. The rooftop was technically off limits to employees, but Victoria had a key to everything. She was already there when he arrived, standing at the edge of the building, looking out over Seattle. The Space Needle rose in the distance, clouds hanging low and gray over Elliott Bay. Hey, he said. She turned. Hey. They stood a few feet apart, neither of them moving closer. Up here, away from cameras and colleagues, they could be themselves. But the distance between them felt wider than it should. That was a good speech, Ethan said. It was honest. I'm not sure that's the same thing. It's better. Victoria smiled slightly. The board wasn't thrilled with my work-life balance comment. They think it makes me look weak. It makes you look human. Same thing, apparently. Ethan crossed the distance between them and took her hand. You did good today. Did I? You stood up there and told 800 people that you don't have all the answers. That takes guts. She laced her fingers through his. I've been thinking about what you said, about figuring this out together. Yeah? I want to try, really try, not just stolen dinners and secret meetings. She looked up at him. But I don't know how to do this without blowing up both our lives. Maybe we don't, Ethan said. Maybe we just take it one step at a time. What's the first step? He thought about it. I think I need to tell Maya. Victoria went very still. You want to tell your daughter about us? Eventually, not today, but she's smart, Victoria. She notices things. And I don't want to lie to her. What if she doesn't? What if she's not okay with it? Then we'll figure that out too. He squeezed her hand. But I need her to know that I'm happy, that I'm not just surviving anymore. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. You keep doing that. What? Making me cry in inappropriate places. He laughed and pulled her closer. Sorry. No, you're not. No, I'm not. They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the city moved below them. Finally, Victoria pulled back. I should get back, she said. Yeah. But Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for making me believe this is possible. He kissed her forehead. It is possible, we just have to be brave enough to try. She nodded and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she turned back. Dinner tonight? Your place? I have Maya. I know, that's why I'm asking. Ethan's heart kicked hard. You want to have dinner with us? If that's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Victoria smiled, and for a moment she looked nervous and young, and nothing like the CEO who'd commanded that boardroom. What is she like? I can bring something. She likes pizza, and asking 1,000 questions. I can handle pizza. The questions might be harder. You'll do fine. She left, and Ethan stood on that rooftop for another 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Victoria Hale was coming to dinner, to meet his daughter. He pulled out his phone and texted his mom. Ethan, can you keep Maya an extra hour after school? I need to clean the apartment. Mom, why? Hot date? Ethan, something like that. Mom, finally, I was starting to worry about you. He smiled and put the phone away. The apartment looked worse than he remembered. Ethan spent 3 hours after work cleaning like his life depended on it. He scrubbed the kitchen, vacuumed the living room, hid the pile of laundry that had been living on the chair for 2 weeks. He threw away expired food from the fridge and wiped down surfaces that hadn't been wiped in months. At 5:30, he picked up Maya from his mom's apartment. Why are you all sweaty? Maya asked as soon as she got in the car. I was cleaning. Why? Because we're having a guest for dinner. Maya's eyes went wide. Who? A friend from work. Is it Marcus? I don't like Marcus. He talks too loud. It's not Marcus. Then who? Ethan took a breath. Her name is Victoria, and she's important to me. Maya studied him with those serious eyes. Important like a boss or important like a girlfriend? When did you learn the word girlfriend? School. Emma has a boyfriend. They hold hands at recess. They're 7. So? Ethan pulled into this parking lot and turned off the car. Victoria is my boss, but she's someone I care about, someone I want you to meet. Maya was quiet for a moment, processing. Does she know about me? She knows everything about you. I talk about you all the time. What did you say? That you're the smartest, funniest, most stubborn kid in the world. Maya grinned. That's true. I know. They got out of the car and headed upstairs. Maya peppered him with questions the entire way. What does Victoria look like? What does she do at work? Does she like space? Does she have kids? Ethan answered as best he could, his nerves building with every step. At 6 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. Ethan opened it to find Victoria standing in the hallway, holding a pizza box and looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. Hi, she said. Hi. She was wearing jeans again and a simple gray sweater. Her hair was down. She looked normal, human, terrified. Is this okay? She asked, gesturing to the pizza. I didn't know what kind she liked, so I got half pepperoni, half cheese. That's perfect. Maya appeared behind him, peeking around his legs. Are you Victoria? Victoria crouched down to Maya's level, the pizza box balanced on her knee. I am. You must be Maya. I'm 7. I heard. That's a very good age. What's a good age for you? Victoria laughed. I'm 38. That's a pretty boring age. My daddy's 32. That's boring too. Hey, Ethan protested. Maya ignored him. Do you like space? I do, Victoria said. Did you know there are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on Earth? Maya's eyes went wide. Really? Really? That's so cool. Do you want to see my space poster? I'd love to. Maya grabbed Victoria's hand and dragged her inside, chattering a mile a minute about constellations and planets and her dream of being an astronaut. Ethan followed, watching the two of them together. Victoria listened to every word Maya said like it was the most important thing in the world. She asked questions. She laughed at Maya's jokes. She complimented the drawings on the fridge. They ate pizza on the living room floor because Maya insisted it was more fun that way. Victoria didn't complain about sitting cross-legged on the carpet, or about the fact that Maya talked with her mouth full. My teacher says Pluto isn't a planet anymore, Maya said around a bite of cheese pizza. Your teacher's right, Victoria said, but a lot of people are still mad about it. Are you mad about it? A little. I grew up when Pluto was a planet. It's hard to let go. Maya nodded sagely. Change is hard. Ethan nearly choked on his pizza. After dinner, Maya wanted to show Victoria her room. They spent 20 minutes looking at books and toys and the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching Victoria sit on the edge of Maya's bed, listening to a 7-year-old explain the difference between asteroids and comets. Eventually, Maya started yawning. Bedtime, Ethan said. But I'm not tired, Maya protested, even as her eyes drooped. Yes, you are. Maya looked at Victoria. Do you have to go? I should probably let your dad get you to bed. Will you come back? Victoria glanced at Ethan, then back at Maya. If your dad says it's okay, I'd like to. Daddy? Yeah, Ethan said. She can come back. Maya smiled and climbed under her covers. Ethan tucked her in while Victoria hovered by the door. Night, kiddo, he said. Night, Daddy. Night, Victoria. Good night, Maya, Victoria said softly. They left the room, pulling the door halfway closed. In the living room, Victoria leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. That was terrifying. You did great. She's amazing, Ethan. Victoria's voice cracked. She's exactly like you described. She likes you. How do you know? Because she doesn't talk that much to people she doesn't like. Trust me, you passed the test. Victoria laughed shakily. There was a test? There's always a test with Maya. They stood there for a moment, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. "Thank you for letting me do this," Victoria said. "I know this is a big step." "It is, but it felt right." "Did it?" "Yeah." He moved closer. "Did it feel right to you?" Victoria nodded. "I've never done this before. Met someone's kid, been part of," she gestured vaguely, "whatever this is." "A family?" She looked at him, something raw and uncertain in her eyes. "Is that what we are?" "I don't know, but we could be." Victoria closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was soft and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I want that. More than I've wanted anything in a long time." "Then let's try." "It's going to be complicated." "Everything worth having is complicated," she smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being scared." They moved to the couch and sat close together, Victoria's head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we figure out how to make this work. Really work." "At work too?" Ethan sighed. "That's the hard part." "I've been thinking about that," Victoria said. "About the fraternization policy. About what it means if people find out. And I think we need to be honest. Not right away, but eventually." She sat up to look at him. "I can't live in secret forever, Ethan, and I can't ask you to either." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'll talk to HR, to the board, figure out a way to restructure so we're not in a direct reporting relationship. It'll take time, but it's doable." "You'd do that? For this?" "Yes." She took his hand. "But I need you to be sure. Because once we go public, there's no going back. People will talk, they'll judge. Some of them will say I'm showing favoritism. Others will say you're using me to advance your career. I don't care what they say. You say that now. But when it's happening, when it's every day, it's harder than you think." Ethan thought about Maya, about the life he'd built, about everything he stood to lose if this went sideways. Then he thought about the cabin, about Victoria sitting next to him by the fire, telling him she knew what it was like to be alone. About the way she'd looked at his daughter tonight like Maya was the most important person in the room. "I'm sure," he said. Victoria smiled, and it was the most genuine smile he'd ever seen from her. "Okay then." "Okay." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, wrapped up in each other. "I should probably go," Victoria said eventually. "It's late. Or you could stay." She raised an eyebrow. "With Maya down the hall?" "On the couch, like a respectable adult." "You want me to sleep on your couch?" "I want to wake up and know you're still here." Victoria's expression softened. "Okay, but I'm stealing all the blankets." "Deal." He grabbed pillows and blankets from the closet. They made a nest on the couch and settled in together, Victoria fitting perfectly against his chest. "This is weird," she said. "Good weird or bad weird?" "Good weird. I've never done this, just slept next to someone without it being about sex. There's a first time for everything." She laughed softly. "I'm learning that." They were quiet for a long time. Ethan thought Victoria had fallen asleep until she spoke. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "I think I'm falling in love with you." His breath caught. "You think?" "I know, I'm not good at saying it." He tightened his arms around her. "I'm falling in love with you too." She turned in his arms to face him. "This is really happening, isn't it?" "Yeah, it really is." She kissed him, and he kissed her back, and for the first time in his life, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The next morning, Maya found them on the couch. Ethan woke to his daughter standing 2 feet away, staring at them with wide eyes. "Morning, kiddo," he said groggily. "Victoria's still here," Maya said, like she was making a scientific observation. "She fell asleep on the couch." "Why?" "Because it was late and she was tired." Victoria stirred next to him, blinking awake. When she saw Maya, she sat up quickly. "Good morning." "Good morning," Maya said. "Do you want cereal?" Victoria looked at Ethan, clearly out of her depth. He nodded. "Sure," Victoria said. "I'd love cereal." They ate breakfast together at the small kitchen table. Maya continuing her interrogation from the night before. Victoria answered every question with patience and humor, and Ethan fell a little more in love with her with every response. When it was time for school, Maya put on her backpack and turned to Victoria. "Are you my daddy's girlfriend now?" she asked. Victoria glanced at Ethan, then back at Maya. "Would that be okay with you?" Maya thought about it seriously. "I guess. As long as you don't try to make me eat vegetables." "I would never," Victoria said solemnly. "Okay then." Maya gave her a hug, quick and unexpected, then ran to the door. "Bye, Victoria." "Bye-bye, Maya." After Ethan dropped Maya at school, he drove Victoria back to her car. "That was," Victoria started. "A lot?" "Perfect. That was perfect." Ethan pulled into the parking lot where she'd left her car the night before. "So what happens now?" "Now I go to work and pretend last night didn't happen, and you do the same." She leaned over and kissed him. "And tonight, we figure out the next step. Together." Together. She got out of the car, and Ethan watched her drive away. At work, everything felt different. Ethan went through his meetings and answered emails and worked on Belmont like he always did. But underneath it all was the constant awareness that Victoria was somewhere in the building, thinking about him the way he was thinking about her. Around 2 p.m., his phone buzzed. "Victoria, HR meeting scheduled for next week, starting the process." "Ethan, you're sure?" "Victoria, I've never been more sure of anything." He smiled and put the phone away. Marcus appeared at his desk. "You're in a good mood." "Am I? You've been smiling at your computer for 10 minutes. It's creepy." Ethan laughed. "Just a good day." "Uh-huh." Marcus leaned against the desk. "You seen someone?" Ethan's heart stopped. "What?" "You've got that look, that stupidly happy look people get when they're falling for someone." "I don't have a look." "You absolutely have a look. So, who is she?" Ethan chose his words carefully. "Someone I care about. That's all I'm saying." Marcus grinned. "Good for you, man. It's about time." "Yeah," Ethan said. "It is." That evening, Victoria came over again. This time, she brought Chinese takeout and a book about astronauts for Maya. They ate dinner together, the three of them crowded around the small table, and it felt so natural that Ethan had to remind himself this was only the second time they'd done this. After Maya went to bed, Victoria and Ethan sat on the couch, talking about work and life and everything in between. "I talked to my attorney today," Victoria said, "about the restructuring. It's complicated, but doable. I'll probably have to step back from direct oversight of your department, create a buffer." "How long will that take?" "A few months? Maybe longer." She looked at him. "Can you handle a few more months of secret dinners and stolen moments? As long as I know there's an end point, I can handle anything." She kissed him. "I'm going to hold you to that." "Good." They sat there for a while, wrapped up in each other, planning a future that had seemed impossible just a few weeks ago. "Ethan?" Victoria said. "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me what it feels like to want something more than success. For introducing me to Maya, for—" Her voice caught. "For making me feel less alone." He pulled her closer. "You're not alone anymore. Neither of us are." "Promise?" "Promise." And for the first time in 20 years, Victoria Hale believed in something more than her company. She believed in them. 3 months passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful planning. Victoria came to dinner twice a week, always bringing something for Maya. Books about space, art supplies, a telescope that cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. Maya adored her, and watching them together made Ethan's chest ache in the best way possible. At work, they maintained their distance. Professional emails, brief conversations and meetings, nothing that would raise eyebrows. But the tension was building. Every day that passed made it harder to pretend. Every time Ethan saw Victoria across a conference room, he wanted to cross the space between them. Every time she looked at him with those careful, neutral eyes, he saw the effort it took her to hold back. The restructuring was moving forward, but corporate bureaucracy moved at a glacial pace. HR had to approve the new organizational chart. The board had to sign off on changes to Victoria's direct reports. Legal had to review every aspect to ensure compliance with company policy. Meanwhile, people were starting to notice. It started small. Marcus commenting on how often Ethan stayed late at the office. Derek mentioning that Victoria seemed to check in on the Belmont project more than usual. A woman from accounting asking if Ethan had heard that the CEO was in a better mood lately. Nothing concrete, nothing actionable. But the whispers were there, circling like sharks. On a rainy Thursday in February, everything came to a head. Ethan was in his office when his phone buzzed. Not a text, a call. From Victoria. She never called during work hours. "Hello? My office. Now." Her voice was tight. "And close the door behind you." His stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "Just get up here." The line went dead. Ethan grabbed his jacket and took the elevator to the top floor, his mind racing through every possible disaster. Did someone find out? Did the board change their minds about the restructuring? Was she ending this? Victoria's assistant wasn't at her desk. That was the first bad sign. He knocked once and entered. Victoria stood by the window, her back to him, arms crossed. She didn't turn when he closed the door. "What happened?" he asked. "We have a problem." "Okay. What kind of problem?" She finally turned to face him. Her expression was carefully blank, which meant she was furious. "Someone sent an anonymous email to the board. About us." The floor tilted beneath him. "What?" "They claimed we've been having an inappropriate relationship, that I've been giving you preferential treatment, that the Belmont project only survived because I intervened." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Which is true, by the way. All of it's true." Ethan's mind went blank. What did the board say? "They're launching an investigation, formal interviews, document review, the works." She pressed her fingers to her temples. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Who sent the email?" "It was anonymous, but I have my suspicions." "Derek?" "Maybe. Or someone else who didn't like me rejecting the acquisition. Or just someone who noticed we've been spending time together and decided to make trouble." She dropped her hands. "It doesn't matter who. What matters is that it's out there now." Ethan crossed the room to her. "What do we do?" "We cooperate with the investigation. We tell the truth." She looked up at him. "And we prepare for the fallout." "What kind of fallout?" "At minimum, I'll probably have to recuse myself from anything involving your department. At worst—" She stopped. "At worst what?" "At worst, they'll ask me to choose between you and the company." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Victoria, I know what I said. I know I told you I'd figure this out, but I didn't account for someone weaponizing it against us." Her voice cracked. "I didn't think it would happen this fast." Ethan pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a second, then collapsed against him. "We'll figure it out," he said into her hair. "How?" "I don't know. But we will." She pulled back, her eyes searching his face. "What if I can't fix this? What if the board forces me to choose?" "Then you choose what makes you happy." "That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who spent 20 years building something." "No, I'm not. But I'm also not the one who told me a few months ago that she was tired of being alone, that she wanted more than just success." Victoria's jaw tightened. That was before this turned into a scandal. "It's not a scandal. It's two people falling in love. In a company with strict fraternization policies that I wrote." Her voice rose. "Don't you see? I created this mess. I made rules I'm now breaking, and everyone is going to see me as a hypocrite." "Or they'll see you as human." "That's not how corporate boards work, Ethan." He cupped her face in his hands. "Then maybe it's time to stop caring what the board thinks." She stared at him. "You're asking me to walk away from my company. I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just saying, maybe there's more to life than cascade development." "Like what?" "Like us. Like Maya. Like having dinner with people you love, instead of eating alone every night." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Like being happy." Victoria closed her eyes. "I don't know if I know how to do that." "Then learn, with me." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Victoria pulled away. "I have to go meet with the board in an hour. Preliminary discussion about the investigation. Do you want me there?" "No. This is something I need to handle alone." She straightened her blazer, pulling herself back together. "But Ethan." "Yeah?" "Whatever happens, thank you for reminding me what it feels like to want something more." He wanted to tell her it would be okay, that everything would work out, but he couldn't lie to her. So he just kissed her, soft and brief, and left before he could make it harder. The investigation took 2 weeks. Ethan was interviewed 3 times. They asked about the Belmont project, about his interactions with Victoria, about whether he felt he'd received special treatment. He answered honestly because lying would only make things worse. Yes, Victoria had protected the project. Yes, they were in a relationship. No, he didn't believe his work had been compromised. No, he didn't expect preferential treatment going forward. The investigator, a severe woman in her 50s with a notepad and zero sense of humor, wrote everything down without comment. During those 2 weeks, Ethan and Victoria didn't see each other outside of work. It was too risky, too complicated, but they texted. Victoria, board meeting tomorrow. They're making their decision. Ethan, whatever happens, we face it together. Victoria, I'm scared. Ethan, me too. The next morning, Victoria called an emergency all-hands meeting. The entire company crammed into the auditorium at 8 a.m., confusion and speculation running rampant. Ethan sat in his usual spot, Marcus beside him looking concerned. This can't be good, Marcus muttered. Ethan didn't respond. Victoria walked onto the stage at exactly 8 o'clock. She looked tired. Her suit was perfect, her hair pulled back, but there were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. She gripped the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. Thank you all for coming on short notice, she said. I'll get straight to the point. Over the past few weeks, there's been an investigation into alleged policy violations regarding my conduct as CEO. The room went dead silent. The investigation has concluded, Victoria continued, and the findings are clear. I violated company fraternization policy by entering into a relationship with an employee, specifically with Ethan Walker, a project manager in our development division. A wave of murmurs swept through the auditorium. Ethan felt every eye in the room turn toward him. Victoria held up a hand. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, I want to make something very clear. Ethan did not pursue this relationship. I did. He received no special treatment, no preferential assignments, no promotions or raises beyond what his work merited. The investigation confirmed this. She paused, and Ethan saw her hands shake slightly on the podium. However, she said, the fact remains that I violated policy. And as CEO, I'm held to a higher standard than anyone else in this company, which brings me to the reason for this meeting. Ethan's heart stopped. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO of Cascade Development. The room erupted. People shouted questions. Someone gasped. Marcus turned to Ethan with wide eyes. Did you know about this? Ethan shook his head, unable to speak. Victoria waited for the noise to die down. This isn't a decision I made lightly. I've spent 20 years building this company. It's been my entire life. But I've also spent 20 years sacrificing everything else. Relationships, happiness, any chance at a life outside these walls. And I'm tired. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. I'm tired of pretending that success is the same thing as fulfillment. I'm tired of measuring my worth by quarterly earnings and market share. And I'm especially tired of living by rules I created to protect myself from ever being vulnerable. She looked directly at Ethan. I met someone who reminded me that there's more to life than work, who showed me what it means to actually live instead of just survive. And I'm choosing that. I'm choosing him. Ethan couldn't breathe. The board has appointed Rebecca Chan as interim CEO, Victoria continued. She's more than capable of leading this company forward, and I'll stay on as a consultant during the transition to ensure continuity. She smiled slightly, but my time as CEO is over, and honestly, I'm okay with that. She stepped back from the podium. That's all. Thank you for 20 incredible years. And then she walked off the stage. The auditorium exploded into chaos. People talking over each other, phones coming out, department heads rushing toward the exits to figure out what this meant for their teams. Ethan sat frozen in his seat. Marcus grabbed his arm. Dude, she just quit. For you. I know. What are you going to do? Ethan stood up. I'm going to find her. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the stares and whispered comments. He took the stairs 2 at a time to the top floor. Victoria's office was empty. Her assistant's desk was cleared. He pulled out his phone and called her. It went straight to voicemail. Victoria, where are you? Call me, please. He stood there for a moment, panic rising in his chest. Then his phone buzzed. Victoria, rooftop. He ran. She was standing at the edge, just like she had been months ago, looking out over the city. But this time there were tears on her face. You quit, Ethan said, breathing hard from the stairs. I did. Why didn't you tell me you were going to do that? Because you would have tried to talk me out of it. You're damn right I would have. She turned to face him. This was my choice, Ethan. Mine. Not the board's. Not yours. Mine. You built this company. I know. And now I'm letting it go. She wiped her eyes. Do you know what it feels like? To spend your entire adult life chasing one goal, achieving it, and then realizing it didn't make you happy. Victoria, I was miserable, she said. For years. I was successful and powerful and completely miserable. And then I got trapped in a cabin with you, and for the first time in my life I felt... She stopped, her voice breaking. I felt like myself. Not the CEO. Not the empire builder. Just Victoria. Ethan crossed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. She clung to him, sobbing into his chest. All the composure she'd maintained in that auditorium shattered. I'm so tired of being strong, she whispered. Then don't be. Not with me. They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the city moved below them. Finally, Victoria pulled back and looked up at him. What now? Now you figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. What if I don't know? Then we figure it out together. She laughed through her tears. You keep saying that, because I mean it. Victoria took a shaky breath. I meant what I said in there about choosing you. I know. I've never chosen anyone over work. Not once. I know that too. So this is new for me. Being someone's person, being part of... She gestured vaguely. Whatever we are. A family, Ethan said. We're a family. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. Are we? Maya thinks so. My mom thinks so. I definitely think so. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The only question is whether you think so. Victoria nodded, unable to speak. He kissed her, soft and slow, and she kissed him back like she was trying to memorize the moment. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I love you, she said. I love you too. What do we do now? Oh, Ethan thought about it. Now we go pick up Maya from school and tell her you're not my boss anymore. Victoria laughed. How do you think she'll take it? She'll probably ask if that means she can have ice cream for dinner. And what will you say? I'll say yes, because today feels like a day for breaking rules. Victoria smiled, a real smile, genuine and unguarded. I like the sound of that. They left the building together hand in hand and didn't look back. 6 months later, Ethan stood in his mother's backyard watching Victoria and Maya build a rocket ship out of cardboard boxes. No, it needs to be taller, Maya insisted. Any taller and it'll fall over, Victoria argued. Then we'll make it stronger. How? I don't know. You're the grown-up. Figure it out. Ethan's mother appeared beside him with 2 beers. She fits right in. Yeah, Ethan said, she does. Patricia handed him a beer and watched Victoria and Maya for a moment. You happy? I am. Good. You deserve it. She took a sip. She does too. Victoria had spent the past 6 months figuring out what she wanted to do with her life. She'd consulted for a few companies, but her heart wasn't in it. Instead, she'd started volunteering at Maya's school, helping with their STEM program. She was good at it. The kids loved her. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't measuring success in dollars or market share. She'd also moved out of her downtown condo and into a house in Ethan's neighborhood. Not with him, not yet, but close enough that Maya could walk over whenever she wanted. They were taking it slow, building something real instead of rushing. It wasn't perfect. There were hard days. Days when Victoria missed the rush of running a company. Days when Ethan worried about money and job security. Days when Maya had meltdowns about change and new people in her life. But they worked through it, together. Now, watching Victoria try to engineer a cardboard rocket while his daughter bossed her around, Ethan realized something. He'd spent years believing that happiness was something other people had, something he couldn't afford, something that required sacrificing everything else. But that was wrong. Happiness wasn't about having everything figured out. It wasn't about perfect circumstances or flawless execution. It was about finding people who made you feel less alone, who reminded you that you were more than your job title or your responsibilities. It was about choosing connection over safety, vulnerability over control. It was about being brave enough to want something more. Victoria looked up and caught him watching. She smiled, and he smiled back. Maya noticed and wrinkled her nose. "Are you guys being gross again?" "We're not being gross," Ethan said. "You're looking at each other with mushy faces." "That's gross." "It's called love, kiddo." Maya considered this. "Can we still have cake for my birthday?" "Yes." "Then I guess it's okay." Victoria laughed and went back to the rocket ship. Ethan's mom nudged him. "You did good." "I got lucky." "You got brave. There's a difference." She was right. He'd been terrified that night in the cabin, terrified of wanting